Hello, I'm Gus Downing, publisher and editor of the D&D Daily, and this is the LP News Network. Today's episode is about the LPM profile of the future and the importance of community relations. As Omni retailing continues to evolve, so does the role of the single unit loss prevention manager. With the internet and technology driving massive change in today's connected store, the LPM is more connected now than ever before and plays a vital role in community relations. Find out what the profile of an LPM may look like in the future and how important community relations really is in retail America. With us today to talk about this is Kevin Colman, Group Vice President of Asset Protection at Macy's. Kevin, thanks for being here today.
Glad to be here.
You know, Kevin, how is Omni retailing impacting the role of the single unit LPM, and how do you see it evolving in the future?
Well, I see the role evolving as quick as retailing is evolving. So.
That's fast.
Yeah, and we've had a big stretch here where the job description has not really changed too much. But if you look at the past 5 or 6 years, and with technology doubling every 4 years, you have to look at your role as a single store LP manager or AP manager as a job that will change, completely flip every 4 years, and I think that's what we're seeing. So when you originally got into AP, if you've been involved in a while, it was very much a adrenaline kind of attack and now job, and the reward was immediate. But as we get into more omni-channel retailing, there's going to be a much more investigative emphasis on a single store AP manager, and there's going to be a much more sophisticated process in order to put together cases involving multiple people over time, and that's really where you're going to make the impact on your store shortage. It's not going to be attacking the shoplifter that walked into that day and was an opportunist.
It's going to be looking more for the media, how they're taking advantage of the omni-channel in different areas by using technology and stuff.
Certainly, and certainly the both internally and externally, our focus has to change. So where you may have protected a store and been there during the busiest shopping time of the day, and they thought that had the biggest impact for the last few years here. Now the time when you're most vulnerable might be when the doors are closed in the morning and your teams are selecting and packing goods to be shipped out of your store or to other stores, and there may be merchandise movement that you see and hands-on merchandise that before would have been suspicious, but now is a totally legitimate business operation, and you have to change your way of thinking about how to attack that.
With technology and analytics continuing to evolve and play such a vital role, how is that impacting the LPM profile?
Well, the LPM profile, for one, has to be a technology-savvy person. And in the past, that may not have always been the case. But with the business and being an APM evolving as quickly as it is, sometimes you learn from the stores before you have something pushed down to you from a central part of your organization telling you how to fix something. And so I know that we rely on ground-up information a lot more than maybe 10 or 15 years ago, and I see that as we go forward, those smart APMs that can come up with, find an exposure and find the patch. I think that information comes from the ground up in the future, and so those people are going to be very successful.
As it relates to social media and the internet, this has really put the LPM on the front line, so to speak, and sometimes in the headlines. How is that impacting the role of the LPM, social media?
It's certainly a major impact, and one thing I know that my company preaches, and I think most do, is brand protection. And when somebody takes a cell phone video and puts it on YouTube for the world to see, it's never the whole scenario. It's always the end. We don't get the people throwing stuff in their handbags and running out the door and punching our detectives as they run out the door. We get the fight on the ground.
Right. The detective taking them down. Right.
Exactly. And so in the media, that's brand damage. Right or wrong. So, we're asking our teams in the stores to make these decisions that are very significant to the overall business and overall business model and the reputation of your company. So, you have to have a new level of sophistication than maybe you have in the past, and your risk-reward decision-making based on how something is going is a lot more complicated than it used to be, and it has a lot more risk to it. So I think you have to be more conservative in your decisions.
So the role of the LP manager themselves has to be a little more sophisticated, a little more tech savvy, and understand the impact of all
Absolutely. They have to be a business leader, and they have to understand total business impact, and their decisions that they make really have to rely on brand protection as priority one, because that's the biggest loss that can happen that day is damage to your brand. It's not what merchandise is walking out of the building or whether or not we complete and apprehend this person.
How do you find that, though, in the interview? I mean, these LPMs are young folks, for the most part. You know, they're coming up the ladder, and you don't have a chance to train them yet, but you get them in that interview, so you really got to kind of steer that interview a little differently than what we did 5 or 10 years ago.
Certainly, and you just have to find somebody that's really into it because they want to be a business person, and as opposed to the adrenaline or takedown shoplifters or the other aspects that are a quality that's good to have in our profession. And then you just have to stay close to it. So everybody has a plan and how they're going to execute, but once your adrenaline starts pumping and a situation gets elevated, you have to decipher who can handle that pressure and still make clear decisions.
With community relations being more important now than ever before, how does this play into the role of the LPM? I mean, the overall community relations standpoint.
This is something that is, again, part of the evolving job that we're talking about here. So everybody will reach out to community leaders when there's an issue and state our case and talk through it. But what we really need to do from a store level is identify who your community leaders are now and work with your community leaders. Let them know what your organization stands for, what you stand for as an LPAP person. We've done some things where we've actually gone to community leaders and say, hey, we have these Christmas jobs or temporary jobs, and if you have some recommendations for people that you would think be good at that, we'd like to talk to them. And that's a great way to start to establish relationships. So if something does happen, the first clip they see on YouTube or the first phone call they get, in the back of their mind is like, oh, it's not these guys. These guys are a good partner with us, and we have some history.
And you'll also have that relationship already built.
Correct.
So in essence, the LP manager is the one reaching out to establish that communications and talking with community leaders.
Absolutely. I mean, your store is in a community and represents a community, and nobody's going to understand your community better than you in your building. And it's your responsibility to really reach out and find out who those key players are and make those contacts.
Well, I would imagine then that they could use the public liaison office with the local police department.
Absolutely. And
they could use the mall management team, quite obviously, to help with those connections and community leaders. And
you know what else they can use? Google. And every one of our people is great with the internet and using Google. So when you look at your urban leagues and just church leaders, community leaders, any area around your store where you can see that you having a relationship now with that person and inviting them in to your store and seeing how you operate is advantageous to you in case something goes south.
That's going to take a lot of guts for an LPM to reach out to some community leaders. I mean, we're talking a 25, 30-year-old executive reaching out to a community leader. Well, it takes a little bit of guts.
When we'll go back to the original question here is how is that job emerging or evolving? That job is becoming much more important and much more sophisticated, and there is going to be far fewer people that can do it in the future. So if you're good at your job and you're rising to the top and you can be a complete player, you're going to become much more important to an organization, and you're going to go very far.
Well, that's going to require the district directors, to use Macy's phraseology,
certainly,
to be much more in training, development, and monitoring the LPMs, and really kind of allowing them to take that risk to reach out.
Yeah, and look, great people do great things. So you hire great people,
Well,
and that's the district role.
Sure.
And then it's the great people at the store's role to execute and elevate yourself above your peers.
That's going to make it even harder to fill those LPM jobs.
It absolutely is. We're all competing. If I ever said what a great company Macy's is to work for.
Kevin, thanks for being here today.
Great to be here.
Well, that's it for this episode, ladies and gentlemen. We'd like to thank you for watching. And until next time, let's keep them all safe out there.